She was born from the mind of Zeus, not from flesh, not from pain, but from thought itself. Fully grown, wrapped in gleaming bronze, with a spear in hand and fury in her eyes. From the first moment, Athena was not a child of love, but a weapon forged in wisdom. And that made her terrifying. She wasn't like the other gods. She didn't seduce or drink or rage without reason. She planned, she calculated. While others fought with muscle, she fought with the mind, and she almost always won. To call Athena a goddess of war is to miss the point. War was just one of her tools. Athena wasn't built to destroy. She was built to control, to shape battlefields, minds, cities, and men. Behind every clever hero stood her shadow. Behind every victory, her unseen hand. And when the gods feared each other, they feared Athena most, because she wasn't driven by impulse. She was something rarer, something far more dangerous in Olympus. She was a strategist. Long before Athena stood tall in armor and glory, her story began with a whisper, a prophecy. The kind of prophecy that makes even gods tremble. It was said that the child of Metis, goddess of wisdom, would one day surpass the power of her father. And that father was Zeus. Zeus, king of Olympus, the ruler of thunder, had seen his own father, Cronus, fall to the very same fate. Cronus, too, had swallowed his children to prevent their rise. History in Olympus had a habit of repeating itself, and Zeus was nothing if not a student of fear. So when Metis became pregnant with his child, Zeus made a decision that would reshape Olympus forever. He didn't wait. He didn't hesitate. He swallowed her whole, not just the child, the mother, the mind. In swallowing Metis, Zeus thought he had outwitted destiny, but you cannot consume wisdom without consequence. The goddess of foresight didn't vanish. She lingered, alive inside him, whispering from the depths of his own thoughts. And the child within her kept growing. What happened next was not a birth. It was a rupture, a splitting of God and idea. One day, Zeus was seized by an unbearable pain in his skull, a blinding agony that no thunderbolt could erase. The gods gathered, helpless, until Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith, lifted his axe and struck Zeus's head open. And from that wound, from thought and torment, emerged Athena. She was not a newborn. She was not crying. She stepped out fully grown, in bronze armor that gleamed like the sun, spear in hand, shield on arm, with eyes that saw through lies. A goddess born not from passion, but from calculation, not of the body, but of the mind. She wasn't Zeus's daughter in the way others were. She was his thought, externalized, weaponized, and glorified. The embodiment of an idea so powerful that Zeus had tried to suppress it by swallowing it whole, and it still escaped him. In many myths, strength is the measure of a god's worth. But Athena's story begins differently. Her very birth is a challenge to that order, a living statement that intellect is greater than brute force. She did not crash into the world through chaos like Ares. She entered with clarity and purpose. And yet there is violence in her birth. A divine skull split open, a goddess forged in pain. But it is a different kind of violence, the violence of awakening, the mind breaking free from its prison. Metis, the goddess of wisdom, never returned to Olympus. But in Athena, her legacy was carved into the very foundation of the pantheon. She was not just another Olympian. She was the Olympian that Zeus feared before she was even born. This is what makes Athena more than a war goddess, more than a protector. She is the unspoken truth of Olympus, that strategy beats strength, that thought can break kings, and that wisdom, no matter how buried, always finds a way to rise. She came from the mind of the king of gods, but she would never bow to him. And that is where her power truly begins. Athena was a paradox by design, a goddess born for war, yet revered for wisdom, a protector of cities, yet a strategist on the battlefield. She held a spear in one hand and a scroll in the other, not literally, but in essence. She was never just a warrior. She was the mind behind the war, the plan behind the sword, the logic behind the blood. Unlike other gods who represented pure emotion or instinct, Athena stood for balance, the harmony between force and foresight. She didn't fight because of rage or ego. She fought because it was necessary. She calculated. She waited. And when she struck, it was with purpose. The Greeks didn't worship her because she could destroy. They worshipped her because she could build. Athena represented civilization itself, the city walls, the courtrooms, the schools, the marketplaces. She was the silent order that kept chaos at bay. She taught humanity more than how to win wars. She taught them how to live after the war was over. While other gods bathed in blood or seduced mortals for pleasure, Athena taught restraint, law, diplomacy. She created systems that outlasted battles. And in doing so, she became a symbol not just of divine power, but of human potential. In this way, Athena was the direct counter to Ares, the god of war in its rawest form. Where Ares represented chaos, Athena embodied discipline. Where Ares charged into the fray, consumed by fury, Athena observed from the hilltop, planning her next move. He was violence without direction. She was violence with purpose. Their clashes in myth weren't just physical. They were ideological. Ares glorified destruction. Athena glorified control. She was not afraid of battle, but she was never ruled by it. In a world of gods who acted on impulse, she was rare. A deity who thought before acting, who valued patience over pride. Athena's contributions to humanity reflect this duality. She didn't gift the world weapons of devastation, but tools of innovation. She was credited with the invention of the chariot, not just for war, but for transport, strategy, and movement. She introduced shipbuilding to the Greeks, giving them dominion over the seas, not just through strength, but through craftsmanship. She taught weaving, a quiet art, but one that wove order from chaos, structure from strands. In giving the olive tree to Athens, she offered something lasting: peace, prosperity, nourishment, trade. It was not a symbol of conquest, but of endurance. Ares may have brought fire, but Athena brought the future. And yet, despite her intellect, she never shed her martial side. She led armies when needed, stood by heroes in times of crisis, and wore her armor not for decoration, but as a warning. You could reason with Athena, but you could never deceive her. She rewarded cleverness, but punished arrogance. She valued loyalty, but demanded discipline. In this way, she was feared and loved, respected and obeyed. Mortals didn't worship her to beg for mercy. They worshipped her to learn, to be sharpened, to be watched by the eye of strategy itself. Athena's nature was never about contradiction. It was about integration. She showed that strength does not have to be mindless, and wisdom does not have to be passive. She proved that a scholar could be a warrior, and a warrior could be a builder. In her, the Greeks saw their highest ideals, not of divinity, but of balance. And in worshiping her, they weren't just honoring a goddess. They were aspiring to be more than brute creatures of survival. They were aspiring to become something greater, civilized, strategic, and wise. In the chaotic theater of Olympus, no rivalry better captured the clash of ideals than Athena versus Ares. They were both gods of war, but that's where the similarity ended. If Ares was the roar of the battlefield, Athena was the silence before it, cold, watchful, calculating. He represented the chaos of combat, the bloodlust, the fury, the broken bodies. She represented strategy, order, and the kind of war that ends wars. When they stood on opposing sides, it wasn't just a battle of weapons. It was a battle of philosophies. Ares was the god who charged first and thought later. He embodied raw, masculine aggression, pure violence without direction. To the Greeks, He was a necessary evil, worshipped more out of fear than reverence. He didn't build or protect, he destroyed. And often, he paid the price for it. In myth after myth, Ares finds himself humiliated or defeated. He rushes into battle only to be bested by mortals, outwitted by other gods, or trapped by his own arrogance. His power was explosive, but unstable. It burned hot and fast, but it rarely endured. Athena, by contrast, moved like a general, deliberate, precise, always 2 steps ahead. Where Ares brought fury, she brought foresight. She chose her battles carefully, knowing when to strike and when to wait. In the Iliad, their contrast becomes unmistakable. While Ares rampages through the battlefield, indiscriminate in his violence, Athena guides heroes like Diomedes and Achilles with subtle nudges and sharp insight. She doesn't fight for the sake of glory. She fights to win and to shape the outcome. When she does take the field herself, she doesn't just overpower. She overwhelms through design. One of their most telling encounters comes during the Trojan War. In the thick of the conflict, Athena and Ares find themselves on opposite sides. Ares, siding with the Trojans, is blinded by rage and loyalty. Athena, backing the Greeks, manipulates the field like a chessboard. She empowers Diomedes with supernatural clarity, allowing him not only to wound Aphrodite, but to strike Ares himself, a god wounded by a mortal. That moment is not just a tactical victory. It's a message. Brute strength, even divine, is vulnerable to intelligence. There's an unspoken gender dynamic woven through their rivalry. Ares is often associated with the raw, unchecked masculine, the kind of power that dominates but lacks purpose. Athena, though feminine, embodies power under control. She doesn't seduce, she doesn't yield, and she doesn't lash out without cause. Her femininity isn't soft, it's sharp, cool-headed, unshaken, commanding. She turns what is often seen as a passive trait, restraint, into her greatest weapon. In doing so, she subverts both divine and cultural expectations. This tension also mirrors deeper human fears. Ares is the war we can't control, the fight that spills out of our hands. Athena is the war we think we can manage, the idea that violence can be structured, that power can be rational. But mythology doesn't crown them equally. Athena is consistently portrayed as victorious, not because she is stronger, but because she understands the game better. She knows when to move, and more importantly, when to let others move for her. She plays the long war, and she plays to win. In their conflict, the Greeks didn't just find entertainment, they found a lesson. That victory doesn't always belong to the strongest, but often to the smartest. That fury burns out, but strategy endures. And in the echo of their battles, Athena remains the symbol of the warrior who thinks, the commander who builds, the power that doesn't need to scream. Ares may roar, but Athena conquers in silence. Athena's favor was not given lightly. She didn't smile upon the strong or the boastful, nor did she choose her champions based on birthright or brute power. Instead, she reserved her guidance and protection for mortals who embodied what she valued most: intelligence, strategy, and cunning. Her relationship with humans was unlike that of many other gods, who demanded worship and sacrifice in exchange for vague blessings. Athena was a mentor, a silent partner in the greatest challenges humanity could face. Her favorites were those who understood that wit could be mightier than the sword. No mortal represented Athena's ideals more than Odysseus, the legendary king of Ithaca. Known for his cunning as much as for his leadership, Odysseus was the embodiment of the strategist, crafty, resourceful, and endlessly adaptable. Throughout the Odyssey and the Iliad, Athena acts as his protector and advisor, guiding him through impossible trials with wisdom rather than strength. She doesn't shield him from danger. Instead, she arms him with insight. When Odysseus faces the Cyclops or the Sirens, it is his sharp mind, bolstered by Athena's guidance, it saves him. His greatest weapons are not spears or swords, but deception and intellect, true reflections of the goddess who watches over him. Athena's relationship with Perseus reveals another facet of her favor toward humanity. Perseus, the hero tasked with slaying Medusa, was no mere brute. His journey was perilous, filled with supernatural threats, and he faced enemies far beyond mortal reckoning. But it was Athena who provided him with essential tools: her polished bronze shield, which he used as a mirror to avoid Medusa's deadly gaze, and her wisdom in planning the approach to his daunting task. Perseus's victory wasn't a matter of strength alone. It was a triumph of careful preparation and clear thinking, virtues Athena prized above all else. Her involvement in his quest was both practical and symbolic, demonstrating how the goddess wove herself into the stories of those who embraced intelligence as power. Athena's favoritism toward mortals who used wit over strength speaks to a larger truth about her nature and the values she upheld. To her, physical might was transient and unpredictable, but the mind was enduring and adaptable. She saw in humanity the potential for greatness, not through conquest, but through learning, innovation, and strategy. This belief set her apart from other gods who reveled in chaos and passion. Athena was the divine champion of civilization itself, and her human favorites were those who built, planned, and solved problems. Her guidance was not without its tests. She demanded discipline and respect, rewarding cleverness but punishing arrogance and recklessness. Those who relied solely on brute force or who acted without thought rarely won her favor. The myth of Arachne, who challenged Athena in weaving and was punished for her hubris, serves as a cautionary tale against overconfidence. Athena's blessings were reserved for those who combined humility with intelligence, who understood that wisdom without action was meaningless, and that action without wisdom was dangerous. In many ways, Athena's favoritism toward mortal heroes reflected her role as a goddess of civilization and order. She was not content to watch from Olympus as humans battled blindly. She wanted to shape the outcome of their struggles, to ensure that wisdom guided their choices. Her presence in the stories of Odysseus and Perseus illustrates this ideal perfectly. Two heroes who succeeded not by overpowering their enemies, but by outthinking them. Through these mortal champions, Athena extended her influence beyond the realm of gods and myths into the hearts and minds of people. Ultimately, Athena's relationship with her mortal favorites highlights her belief in the power of human potential. She saw in those who used strategy and intellect a reflection of herself, and she chose to nurture that potential whenever she could. Unlike many deities who demanded blind obedience, Athena rewarded understanding, planning, and skill. Her favorite heroes were those who embraced challenge not with rage, but with reason, not with raw power, but with patience and precision. In this way, Athena's favor was more than divine blessing. It was an invitation to rise above instinct and impulse, to wield the mind as a weapon, and to prove that true strength lies not in muscle alone, but in the power of thought. Athena's justice was swift and unyielding. She was a protector of wisdom and order, but she was no gentle guardian. Those who earned her favor found an ally, but those who dared to challenge her or flaunt their pride faced her wrath without mercy. Athena's fierce justice was one of the most defining traits of her character. She rewarded humility and cleverness, yet crushed arrogance and disrespect. To her, pride was the greatest sin, and hubris the quickest path to downfall. One of the clearest examples of Athena's unforgiving justice is the myth of Arachne. Arachne was a mortal weaver of extraordinary skill, so talented that she dared to boast she was better than Athena herself. Such arrogance was dangerous in the eyes of the gods, especially to Athena, who took great pride in her own mastery of weaving and craftsmanship. Rather than ignore the challenge, Athena disguised herself as an old woman and warned Arachne to humble herself. But Arachne refused to relent and insisted on a weaving contest. The contest was a spectacle of skill and creativity, with both women producing tapestries of incredible beauty. Arachne's work was flawless and depicted scenes that mocked the gods, highlighting their flaws and mistakes. Though her talent was undeniable, it was her disrespect that sealed her fate. Athena, enraged by the mortal's audacity and the blasphemy in her tapestry, punished Arachne by transforming her into a spider, condemning her and her descendants to weave webs for eternity. This myth captures the harsh reality of Athena's justice. Talent alone was not enough. Respect and humility before the divine order were essential. Her punishment was brutal, yes, but it was also a warning. No one mortal or immortal could defy the gods without consequence, especially not the goddess who embodied wisdom and discipline. Another tale that reveals Athena's darker, less merciful side is the tragic story of Medusa. Before she became the infamous Gorgon, Medusa was a beautiful mortal woman, a priestess devoted to Athena's temple. But when Poseidon violated Medusa within those sacred walls, Athena's response was severe and controversial. Instead of punishing Poseidon, she cursed Medusa, transforming her into a monstrous creature whose gaze would turn anyone who looked upon her to stone. This transformation is a haunting example of Athena's complex nature. To modern eyes, it may seem unjust and cruel, a punishment falling on the victim rather than the aggressor. But in the ancient world, Athena's actions reflected her strict adherence to order and purity, especially within her sacred space. Medusa's curse was both a punishment and a protection. She became both feared and untouchable, a symbol of what happens when divine law is violated. The myths surrounding Athena revealed that her justice was not always kind or forgiving. She could be protective and nurturing, especially toward those who sought wisdom and balance. But when confronted with hubris, disrespect, or disorder, she was ruthless. Her punishments were harsh, but they served a purpose: to maintain cosmic balance and remind mortals of their place in the world. This duality raises an enduring question. Was Athena truly fair, or was she simply a ruthless enforcer of divine will? The answer may lie somewhere in between. Athena's fairness was tied to her concept of justice as order. She was fair to those who respected the rules and the natural hierarchy, but merciless to those who threatened it. Her justice was not about mercy or forgiveness. It was about preservation, preserving wisdom, civilization, and divine order at all costs. In a world ruled by gods prone to passion and impulse, Athena was the embodiment of discipline and control. Her justice was fierce because the stakes were high. To her, the survival of civilization depended on humility, respect, and adherence to order. Those who challenged these principles risked not only punishment, but oblivion. Athena's legacy as a goddess of justice reminds us that wisdom is not passive. It demands vigilance, strength, and sometimes severity. She protected the wise and the humble, but she crushed the arrogant without hesitation. Her fierce justice was a tool as sharp as her spear, and it shaped not only the gods and mortals of myth, but the values of the cultures that worshipped her. Athena's story did not end with ancient myths or crumbling temples. Her legacy lives on, echoing through centuries and into our modern world. She remains one of the most enduring symbols of intelligence, strength, and balance, a goddess who transcends time and culture. But why do we still worship her symbols today? Why does Athena continue to captivate artists, storytellers, and thinkers thousands of years after her myths were first told? One of the most tangible testaments to Athena's legacy is the city of Athens itself, named in her honor and crowned by the majestic Parthenon. This temple, perched atop the Acropolis, was built as a tribute to her wisdom and protection. The Parthenon stands as a monument not just to a goddess, but to the ideals she represents: civilization, democracy, knowledge, and strategic warfare. It was here that Athenians worshipped Athena as their patroness, believing she safeguarded their city through wisdom as much as through might. The very stones of Athens whisper her story, of a protector who shaped not only the battlefield, but the foundation of a society that values reason and order. Athena's influence extends far beyond ancient Greece. Today, she appears repeatedly in popular culture movies, books, and video games reinvented and reimagined for new generations. In games like God of War, Athena is portrayed as a powerful and complex figure, blending her warrior side with her role as a guide and protector. In Percy Jackson's modern retelling of Greek myths, she emerges as a mentor to young heroes, embodying intelligence and courage. Even in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, her presence looms large, symbolizing strategy, knowledge, and divine intervention. These appearances are not just fan service. They reflect a timeless fascination with a goddess who embodies the perfect balance between brain and brawn, calculation and courage. What makes Athena such a compelling figure in modern storytelling is her unique duality. She is not a goddess of blind rage or uncontrolled passion. She is the goddess of discipline, planning, and wisdom. In a world often divided between strength and intellect, Athena represents their union. She teaches us that true power comes from the harmony of these forces, where intelligence guides strength, and strength protects wisdom. This balance is as relevant today as it was in ancient times, whether in leadership, warfare, or personal growth. From a psychological perspective, Athena can be seen as an archetype of the warrior strategist. In the framework developed by Carl Jung, archetypes are universal symbols embedded in the collective unconscious patterns of behavior and thought that resonate across cultures and history. Athena embodies the qualities of the wise warrior, the protector who uses intellect and discipline rather than brute force alone. She represents the part of ourselves that plans carefully before acting, that values justice, courage, and foresight. In this sense, Athena is not just a mythological figure. She is a reflection of an ideal within the human psyche. Her archetype encourages us to develop both mind and body, to seek strength that is tempered by wisdom, and to face challenges with both courage and calculation. This is why Athena remains relevant in fields as diverse as psychology, leadership studies, and even modern conflict resolution. Her story reminds us that power without control is dangerous, and wisdom without action is powerless. Athena's symbols, the owl, the olive tree, the spear, and shield, continue to inspire. The owl represents her unmatched wisdom and watchfulness. The olive tree symbolizes peace and prosperity, and her spear and shield stand for protection and strategic warfare. These symbols are found in everything from university logos to military insignias, demonstrating how deeply Athena's legacy has permeated our cultural consciousness. In many ways, Athena is more than just an ancient goddess. She is an eternal symbol of what humanity strives to be. Her legacy challenges us to blend knowledge with action, to wield power responsibly, and to seek balance in all aspects of life. Whether through the towering columns of the Parthenon or the glowing screens of modern entertainment, Athena's presence reminds us that the greatest battles are won not just with strength, but with wisdom. In a world filled with chaos and noise, Athena reminds us that the sharpest blade is not forged from steel, but from the mind. She symbolizes balance, discipline, and the power of strategy over sheer force. From ancient battlefields to modern challenges, Athena's legacy teaches us that wisdom combined with strength is the key to true victory. Her owl watches over us still, urging us to think before we act, to protect what we build, and to face adversity with calm resolve. As we navigate an increasingly complex world, one can only wonder, what would Athena look like today? Would she be a leader guiding us through conflict, a strategist solving the problems of our age, or a symbol inspiring us to rise above impulsive chaos? Thank you for watching this deep dive into the goddess who shaped history and myth alike. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a journey into legend.